So here is a Catio user, always quite enthusiastic. So initially when I adopted Miley, he started to dart out between my legs to go outside. So I started to do leash walks with him, but I wanted to avoid him darting out when I opened the door every time. And I thought I would make myself an airlock. And then I realized that I could not only make an airlock, but I could also build a full Catio. This door allows me to separate the airlock from the Catio, so when I have guests I can ask them to check that there is no cat with them in the airlock before opening the second door, so I can isolate the Catio. They have cat grass in there, and I put a box with a hole in it and some insulation, because in the winter, if I accidentally locked them up outside, they would have somewhere at least away from the wind where they can stay warm. It only happened once, and only for 5 minutes, but if I were to leave the house and someone here had done something and gotten caught outside with the access to the Catio closed, I want to avoid them getting caught in the cold weather. That's also why I have this elastic here. It prevents the door from accidentally being closed by careless kitties, who would then not have the access to the cat flap that's in the Catio. This is a window where I added a wooden frame with a cat flap on a transparent acrylic panel. The cat flap is a bit dirty here because it gets cat grease and fur all the time. During the winter I can close the window, but if I want to allow them to go outside, even if it's below freezing because Miley wants to go in any weather, I can leave the window open, and the combination of the acrylic panel and the good cat flap prevents most of the cold from coming in. I used to have a ramp here so that they could go up, but ramps are really crappy for cats. They are hard on the paws and it will only get worse as they age. So now I have steps instead, and that's a lot better. And naturally, from the very beginning, they wanted to climb everywhere that they could on the mesh. So I added all sorts of planks so that they could go all around. This brings us to this. This is fencer wire mesh. If I remember correctly, it's about 1.5 inches by 1.5 inches. It's covered in a black coating, and that's a lot better than just a galvanized. The tunnels that you see in the back were not originally painted black. It would have costed more to have the galvanized steel covered in black, and I did not have the money at the time. But eventually I realized that painting them black with a little paint roller was really worth it. The holes in the tunnels are bigger, although that's hard to see here with the distance. But the holes in the tunnels are definitely bigger, at about 2 inch by 2 inch, and the birds are able to get inside these. So we make catios so that our animals will be less likely to kill birds, but that doesn't mean it's never going to happen. The catio is locked. It's not perfect, but I try to make it so that if someone enters the yard while I'm not supervising my cats, they won't easily be able to come in or let my cats out or steal my cats or whatever. They have a cat scratcher in there. It's slightly old, but still functioning. So if we back up a bit, these are the Habitat Haven tunnels. They go all around with the staircase and a little box that has a door that I attached well, again, to avoid people being easily able to open it. I added a little roof so that the sun doesn't reach them everywhere. I now actually have little curtains that can go all over these tunnels, but mainly for the winter, so that there isn't as much snow that goes into the tunnels. I did make some sort of fork in a plywood so that I can shovel the tunnels relatively well, but the curtains really help during the winter. During the summer, I like it that they can feel the sun on them, the air coming in, and see the birds in the sky, so I leave them without curtains. That's the other tunnel, the one that I made myself. The big difference I'll show you. The Habitat Haven tunnels don't have the same width in their floor as in their sides. That's probably because using such large planks would have been overly expensive. It means that they can see downwards, which is nice, but it also means that they could step with their paw in there. That being said, my cats really love to lie down in those tunnels, and so it's not really an issue. To remove the planks, you would just have to take the staples out from the sides and the plank comes out from underneath. And aha! Here comes a resident! The tunnels are a little too short in height for the candy cane tail to be fully extended, but that's okay. This is the cat who always wants to be outside, so the tunnels are a lot for him. For the tunnel that I made myself and added afterwards, I bought 2 planks that cost me quite a lot. So the base is a lot larger for them to lie on, and you can look at the difference between the wire meshes. So you've got the really very robust from Habitat Haven. I'll show you. It really does not bend. It was bent in the factory. There's no way a coyote would get inside these. This might be a point of importance if you live in the countryside or somewhere where there are coyotes. The other tunnel, the one that I built with the help of my neighbor, we folded the wire mesh on the ground before installing it up there and attaching it with screws and washers, alternating with one up and one down. So the wire mesh has holes that are a lot smaller than those in the first part of the Catio that we saw earlier. It's about 1 inch or 3/4 of an inch. And the wire mesh that's over there in the Catio is gauge 16. And that's the minimum thickness that you want to have for your Catio mesh. Same thing if you have chickens. In order to avoid the raccoons getting in, you need gauge 16. So don't use chicken wire if you're going to not always supervise your cats when they are in the Catio. This is gauge 14. So as the number goes down, the thickness goes up. So this is more robust. So on the one end, this is gauge 14, and then on the other, for the same surface area, we have more squares, so more material than we did in the Catio. So this one is a lot more rigid. Even though it was doable to bend it ourselves, it was a little hard, and once it's installed, it's pretty stiff, and it holds itself well. So I don't need to add pieces of wood to do a frame to make sure that if one of my cats were to bump the other, and they fell on the wire mesh wall, they didn't make the whole tunnel collapse on its side. The tunnel maintains its form really well. I assembled this with screws and washers, and on the top I assembled the long 2 pieces of wire mesh together with things that they sell for making rabbit enclosures. Honestly, they were barely long enough because when you have 2 wire mesh thicknesses, these are hard to rest against each other well because the wire mesh is stiff. It can be hard to work the tool just right, but it worked. This is cedar. This is also cedar in the Habitat Haven tunnels, if I remember correctly. They now have a path to go back to the top of the Catio and then go down. So when I started, I made the Catio itself, and then I added the Habitat Haven tunnels, and then I added the tunnel that I made myself to complete the path so that there would not be a dead end anymore. When I adopted Leia and she started to go outside, she tended to sit in the tunnel, and that would block Miley or Middleman's path to go back inside. And that's important to consider if you have more than one cat. The base of these tunnels isn't super large, and so it's harder for them to pass by one another, especially if they don't necessarily have a great relationship. So Miley and Middleman get along well, but in the beginning Leia would be a little more hard-headed, let's say. And so now the second tunnel is wider, so it's easier for them to cross one another in it. And there's no more dead end because of that second tunnel. So that's a good way to solve behavior problems we might have. Change the environment and the behavior changes by itself. There's no more squabbles. This platform is large here again to make it easy for them to pass by one another when they come in and out. Something else to consider is outdoor animals. So there's currently a free-roaming male cat in the neighborhood that's not neutered, and that's why there's P here. Because of COVID, the Trap Neuter release program is on hold, and so it's the second year that I ended up having a bit of marking behavior from my own cats in the Catio, because that cat who himself comes to pee near the catio to mark, and so that's stressful for my cats. So there might be circumstances where you don't want to throw yourself in a catio project. If there are a lot of outdoor cats in the neighborhood, if you already have a problem of urinary marking. There are also encounters with wild animals, such as raccoons and skunks. And so it's important that if your cat goes outside in a catio, you make sure that they are protected against illnesses that they might encounter from other cats. So things like feline leukemia, fleas, mites. Make sure that you tell your vet that your cats go out in a catio. Here we have raccoons. Raccoons are great climbers. And recently I added this hanging pipe so that it will be harder for them to reach the balcony. And so far it seems to have worked last night, so we'll see. On the second floor we have a little cat hammock in the patio door. And in the screen I have a little cat flap. This is how I secure it if I don't want them to go outside. These are orange pipe cleaners and a tie wrap. The catio is almost resting on the screen, so they don't tend to think that they might be able to go out this way, but it's not the best, okay? So if you have larger gaps, you might try using pool noodles or water pipe insulation to close those gaps. So this is all galvanized and uncovered, so there's no black coating over it. And you can see how much we notice the wire mesh compared to the other ones. This is 2 by 4 inch holes, and it's a little big for my liking. I once had a tiny foster cat that weighed only 5 pounds, and I think that she might have been able to squeeze through, and she really tried. This catio was made with leftover materials from another project. And we will have someone demonstrating for us. Here, because there were sharp edges, I used electrical cord covers. So this gives them another little special spot perched up high. Ideally, I would connect this one with the other one, but in the winter, I move this one further down the balcony so that I can shovel the snow, and so it's not available to them during the winter. That's the anti-raccoon pipe, and this is an overall view. It allows them to feel the wind and catch the odors and feel the sun on them. That's one thing you need to be careful about. Miley and Minoman eat up quickly because of the black body effect, and so they tend to look for shade. But Leia is of a lighter color, and she could catch a sunburn more easily, so you want to be mindful of that. If you have greenery, it's quite enriching. It attracts birds. Bird bath is another thing that brings birds for your cats to look at. Make sure to change the water daily and scrub with a brush. And that's the window and the cat flap from the inside with all the greasy cat residue I should have washed. So I hope this has given you ideas and has been useful, and I will let you enjoy pictures of happy cats in their catio.